Welcome to the complete animation of Judy Hopps from Walt Disney Animation Studios' 2025 animated feature Zootopia 2. This is one of the longest complete animation videos I've ever made, and it is also one that I was hurrying to make. So I make these complete animation videos mostly as a hobby, but I do have a fairly successful YouTube channel, and there are some times where I feel like I need to get a video done because it is topical and there's a good chance I can get lots and lots of views. It's like, the money isn't everything. But in this case, it was a pretty big driving factor for how fast I wanted to get this movie made, this video. And so, given how long this movie is, and given how much time it takes to make a complete animation video of a main character, and how the video files were only available to me a week ago, I think I ended up spending about 30 hours or more working on this video over the past week. I've been working really hard on it. And that's just to get it out soon. So, Zootopia 2 is a movie that I have a whole lot of thoughts about, and I feel like I don't really have good thoughts yet. I think that this is a movie that I will need to let simmer in the back of my mind, watch it again a couple of times when I have the 4K Blu-ray set. I did see it 2 times in theaters, and I've really combed over the footage a lot when making this video. But I feel like I just don't really have a good, solid opinion on the movie yet. I will say off the bat that I think it is a good movie. I think it's a good movie. I think that the studio should be proud of what they've made. But right now, I have to qualify that in a lot of ways, and I feel like it just didn't need to, I feel like that opinion would be much better, would have a much better evolution over time. So just know that the things that I say about how I feel about this movie will most definitely change over years, probably. Which is sort of weird. It's like, you either like the movie or you don't, but I feel like I do like the movie, but I don't really know how much I like it right now. And I think that's an alright thing to think, because I did spend years loving the first movie. Like, I am a huge fan of the first Zootopia. I don't think I'm as big a fan of that one other guy on YouTube who likes it so much that he says that it's his favorite movie of all time, and that he likes it so much that he has over 100 copies of the movie, where he basically is like, I like Zootopia so much, I'm going to get every DVD release, every Blu-ray release from every region. He liked it so much that he ended up making his own VHS release. So I don't like it that much, but I really do like the first Zootopia. And given how cagey I am about talking about the sequel, I don't feel that way about the sequel, though I do like it. But going into the sequel, I decided that I really just hate trailers. I think the biggest thing that helped me decide that is just how awful the trailers are for so many movies. You look at the trailer for Sing, the first Sing, or the trailer for Transformers 1. They don't advertise the movie very well. It's like you look at the movie that you actually get, and you look at the trailer, and you're like, wow, how is it even possible that they're able to misrepresent this movie so much? And so, I was media blackout on Zootopia. I never saw a single trailer for Zootopia. I had no idea about basically anything. I wish that I could have not seen any posters. Like, it would be so cool if I could go into Zootopia 2 not even knowing that there were snakes. But I did. I did know that there were snakes. And I think that that would have been awesome if I could have gone into it without knowing it was snakes. Because, like, do you know how cool of a... Like, given the story that Zootopia is, do you know how cool it would be if you went in and you knew nothing that there were going to be snakes in there? They could have advertised it that way. They could have been like, yep, this is Zootopia 2, and then it is a complete and total surprise. None of the marketing material could have said anything about snakes. But they did, and I think that that was a lost opportunity. I really dislike trailers and spoilers, and then that opens up the whole can of worms about what constitutes a spoiler. I've seen a whole lot of people's opinions online about what constitutes a spoiler for a movie, and there are some people who think that anything that is an officially released bit of information about the movie is a spoiler. I think that that view is way too broad. Like, holy cow. You, like, if you go by that sense, like, it's almost impossible for anything to be a spoiler if you say that if it's an official trailer or clip or whatever, then it's not a spoiler. Then, like, they could have the entire movie posted online, and that wouldn't be a spoiler. So I really disagree with the idea that anything that's officially released is a spoiler. And I was so determined to avoid spoilers that I even, like, distanced myself from certain communities online before the movie came out, because I knew that they would be just posting nothing but constant clips and stills, just everything from every trailer that was released. And I was like, why do people do that? Do people not enjoy being delighted and surprised by an entire movie? People who comb over every single scrap of information before a movie is even out, don't they feel like they're missing out on at least something when they actually see the movie itself? I do. And that's why I like to go into movies knowing as little as possible. I don't like trailers, especially for animated movies. At this point, I know that I'm ready to see just about any animated movie there is. I don't need to be sold on it. And it seems that trailers are just there to sell the movie, which, you know, fair enough. You gotta let people know that the movie exists before they can see it. But I don't need to be sold. Animation is my preferred medium of choice. I love seeing new animated movies. All I have to do is know that it exists, and I'm ready for it. I might not see them all in theaters, because honestly, I kind of prefer watching movies on my own, in my own little home theater setup. I think that my OLED TV is better than movie theater displays. I think that the sound system works better for me, just having a fairly decent sound bar just right there for me. I feel like the important sounds I can still hear just well enough. Maybe one day I'll upgrade my sound system and my TV. I'll get an even better TV and I'll get a real surround sound system. But even now, just a simple soundbar and a decent quality OLED TV, I think that I have a more enjoyable way of just me and the movie right here, right there. And maybe that when I finally see Zootopia 2 on my preferred in my preferred way, my opinion on it will change. I will end up liking it a little more. Or maybe then my opinion will firmly be, pretty good movie but could be a whole lot more. So, I feel like I have issues with the movie, but it seems like the issues that I have seem to change. When I first saw the movie, one of the biggest glaring things that I looked at was why do they spend so much time recycling footage from the first film? It's like there are entire clips, iconic clips that are lifted wholesale from the first film, and that just doesn't seem right to me. It's like, and I think that might be a bit of an issue with the movie in general. It's like it feels like it's more determined to show off that yes, this is the sequel to Zootopia. Look at how much of Zootopia is in it, and it seems like it was less about being Zootopia 2. Zootopia is an amazing movie, but I didn't come to Zootopia 2 to see Zootopia. I came to see Zootopia 2. And it seems that Zootopia 2 sometimes felt like it didn't have enough going on its own, and so it felt the need to rehash the first movie in so many ways. From opening with just replaying the climax of the first film to constantly having, iconic scenes from the first movie just playing in there. Not like iconic scenes, but like the establishing shots. And in doing so, it doesn't feel like Zootopia 2 has the effortless world building that the first one had. The first Zootopia reveled in its world. And it feels like the second one, it inhabits that world and tries to, make it a little more fleshed out by making the entire story about the weather walls. The phrase weather wall never showed up in the first Zootopia as far as I can remember. And, I haven't actually watched Zootopia 1 since seeing Zootopia 2, so I can't confirm that, but I am pretty sure that the phrase weather wall wasn't even in the first movie. The actual structures were very visible, and they were just part of the world. Part of a world that did so many other things. And they didn't dwell on them. They're like, yes, these exist, and this is how things work. Like, that's why there's a giant heat exchanger between Tundra Town and Sahara Square, because, just makes one side cold and one side hot. That's really cool. But going into detail on it just didn't feel as natural and fluid and right as it did in the first movie. I will say that the first time I saw this movie, the biggest issue I had was when Judy Hopps was shown front and center with clips from the first movie that she was injured. You know, the part where they were running through the Museum of Natural History, and as they're running, she clips her leg on part of an exhibit and gets a pretty good gash on her leg, and she says, "I can't walk." And then she is, limping the entire time. Then immediately after that, they show a new clip where it's, Nick and Judy coming out of the front of the building. And what is Judy doing? She is walking just fine. Absolutely zero limp. And it just makes you think, okay, which is it? The Zootopia 2? Are you beholden to the first movie in ways that you recycled parts of the first movie? Or are you going to are you just going to ignore parts of the first movie such that you can't even, make sure that Judy still has a limp? And going through the complete animation process of this, actually editing the entire movie, I think I get where they're going for, because there's a scene at the end of Zootopia 2 where Judy kicks open some double doors in the exact same way, and that's how the second movie has its bit of climax. And so they wanted to turn it into a sort of, it rhymes within itself. A bit of what you saw in the first bit of the movie also happens in this at the end. A bit of something that happens at the beginning of the movie also happens at the end. And I'm pretty sure that that's what they were more concerned about. But seriously, Judy not having an injured leg while they show it in this second movie. Like, what were they thinking? It's like, are they detail oriented or are they not? But Zootopia 2, when it is doing things that are new and exciting and aren't, direct one-for-one copies of the first movie, it actually ends up doing pretty well for itself. Like, for example, the big, fancy party that they go to, and, Judy's wearing a dress. It's like, great. That's awesome. That is something that we did not see in the first movie. And they did a really good job with that scene, because Judy usually has this, tough persona that she puts on. And so her wearing a dress is very different. But while she's wearing the dress, there is one scene where she is clearly still not, she's not rocking the dress. She's walking with straight shoulders, head up, hands in fists, in a more powerful pose. It's like, that is an amazing detail. That is the kind of detail that Zootopia 2 is here for, where it just shows Judy has this tough girl persona that even when she is, wearing a fancy dress in a fancy party, she can't really escape that. She wasn't walking with swaying hips and one hand on one hip. Yeah, that's not who Judy is. And they captured that perfectly in the gala scene. But then there are times when they try to throw Judy and Nick's relationship into question. It's like, when I see sequels, I like it when the friendships that were forged in the first movie are respected. So here in the second one of Zootopia, here in Zootopia 2, they were obsessed with testing the limits of Judy and Nick's relationship. Are they friends? Yes, but do they work well together? Sometimes. What are their motivations? That's where they're like, yeah, that whole question is something that I wish they didn't even have. I wish that they were just good partners throughout, and their partnership and their friendship wasn't the issue. They were just together for facing the new problem the entire way. Good example: How to Train Your Dragon 2. And How to Train Your Dragon 1, what were the big relationships? There was Hiccup and his father, Hiccup and Astrid, Hiccup and the other teenagers, and Hiccup and Toothless, and Hiccup and Gobber. What changed in that movie? Hiccup started out being pretty good friends with Gobber, mostly because he was his mentor while working, polishing weapons and things. Hiccup was not on good terms with his father. They did not see eye to eye on everything. Hiccup, Basic, and Toothless becoming friends was like the entire point of the movie. And Hiccup and Astrid ended up having a little bit of a budding romance, and Hiccup was originally sort of ostracized by the other teenagers, but then he became friends. Like, basically all of those relationships that they worried about in the first movie ended up being good relationships near the end. He was friends with everybody, and there was turmoil and everything, and that was a great arc for the first movie. And then, what happened in the sequel? Hiccup and Astrid, still good friends. Their relationship is continuing to grow. Hiccup and the others, they respect him, he respects them. Yeah, they respect him, he respects them, and they're all working together. Great. What happens with Hiccup and Stoic, his father? Stoic thinks that Hiccup is amazing. Like, he loves his son. He thinks that his son and the things he does for dragons is like the coolest thing ever. But he wants him to take a little bit more responsibility because he's basically heir to the throne. He's going to inherit being leader of the Vikings. And Gobber kind of becomes Hiccup's student, because Hiccup is the one that has crazy ideas of contraptions, and Gobber, he's a talented smith, and he's able to help Hiccup with that. So, like, every relationship from the first movie feels like like in the sequel, like, it's still intact. All they do is build upon it. There's no big thing about how Hiccup and Astrid are like, oh, are we really friends? Are we even, like, maybe gonna continue this romantic thing? No, they don't do that. Hiccup and Stoic. Stoic continues to respect his son like nobody's business. And, like, what they do in How to Train Your Dragon 2 is make all the conflict come from new things, not by throwing old relationships into question. Where does that come from? Hiccup's long-lost mother. Excellent. There's a new villain in town, a human who controls dragons for evil. Great. There's a sort of mercenary Viking who sort of works for the villain. Awesome. That is where the conflict comes from, and it's the old friendships that are still strong that work on it. Zootopia 2, however, feels like, yes, we do have some new relationships, but only real one new friend, quote-unquote. Nibbles. Ugh. I don't want to talk about Nibbles. I'll just get upset. I don't like the character. Yeah. So there's that and Gary. Gary is a friend that is a good thing. Gary Snake. He's both Gary the Snake and Gary Snake. But they spend so much time trying to make this whole plot about Judy and Nick not being a good fit for each other. They spend so much time so that they can have this scene in, the honeymoon lodge where Nick says, "It's not worth it. Saving the city isn't worth it. Doing this right thing isn't worth it. We need to, get out of here and live while we still can." And then Judy saying, "I think we might be too different." And then later on, they, explained that, the only reason Nick feels that way is because he cares about her more than anything else. And she has issues as well. So, I don't think that was a good way to do this story. I think that this story would have been better if Judy and Nick were just the dream team the entire time. They could find ways to make them even more of the dream team rather than being like, oh, they're not actually the dream team. They have to go on through another, journey of self-discovery before they're actually the dream team. Let's talk about something positive for a bit. I've got a lot of issues with the story of Zootopia 2, but I have no issues with the visuals of Zootopia 2. I think that Zootopia 2 is an absolutely gorgeous movie. Whatever qualms I might have had with whatever the writers ended up doing for this movie, I do not have any issues with what the animators did, what the artists did. This movie is absolutely gorgeous. Every part of this movie is firing on all cylinders from a purely technical perspective. The lighting is amazing. This movie fixed motion blur. I remember watching Rio, seriously, back in 2021. Yeah, 2021, I watched Rio, and I was like, is this movie broken? This motion blur is awful. But, to be fair, Rio did come out in, 2011? But Zootopia 2, as I'm going through the, making this video and going through the movie frame by frame, I never once thought, oh, this motion blur is awful. I never thought it was awful when I watched the movie. I never thought it was awful when I was combing through the footage. I don't know enough about motion blur to say exactly what changed between Rio and Zootopia 2. I understand they're not the same studios, and I understand there's also 15 years of difference. But so I don't know what happened, but Zootopia 2 has really good motion blur. It looks good. And the character animation is amazing. And they do so many fun things. I thought that Judy's ears were super expressive in the first movie, and so did everyone else. Everyone else is her ears, when they perk up and when they go down, they're such a big part of, her expressive face. And they somehow managed to do even more with her ears here in the sequel. Her putting her ears in a bun sort of thing to go to the fancy party, amazing. Her wringing out her ears as if they're hair after they were wet, awesome. Nick yanking on her ears and her saying, "Never pull a rabbit's ears." All of that is amazing. And the fur looks even better than it did in the first movie, which is impressive because I thought that the fur was amazing in the first movie. The movie looks absolutely incredible, but at the same time, I feel like it could have done more. What's on display is amazing, but it feels like it is shackled by the first movie. It feels like it wasn't able to be all that it could be because it was a sequel. You look at one of the studio's earlier sequels, The Rescuers Down Under. it is clearly a sequel to the first movie, but it also has a completely different art style. Zootopia 2 looks like it could have come out 2 years after the first movie. The art style is practically identical. I'm pretty sure that if somebody were able to grab the actual like Maya files, they'd show that, oh, the character models actually have a good bit of difference. But to me, just, an observer watching the movie, I'm like, yeah, this looks basically like this basically looks like Zootopia 1, where somebody took the graphic sliders and turned them up. And I get it, animation is expensive and you can reuse character models. But I kind of think, do we really need to reuse character models from the first Zootopia? The first Zootopia, when you watch it, just as a regular viewer, you just see a city full of animals. But when you do multiple complete animation videos on the first Zootopia, you notice things. And there are reused models everywhere. Anytime there's a crowd, you'd be like, oh wow, there are so many reused character models in here. It's not something that the average person is ever going to take issue with, but it's something that seems like it's designed, was destined to be an issue that I would take with it. It's not the fault of the movie, but yeah, there's a whole lot of reused assets in the first movie. And I kind of feel like one of the reasons why they were able to get this sequel greenlit is because they were able to reuse a lot of the assets from the first movie. And even if a bunch of the assets were reused, and even if they weren't, the art style was reused, and I guess the elephant in the room is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. The Last Wish is one of the greatest movies of the 2020s. Absolutely amazing, firing on all cylinders, visual and storytelling masterpiece. Like, seeing Zootopia 2 reusing assets and feeling so limited in scope because it's a sequel to the first movie, it's like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish came out in 2022 and the first Puss in Boots came out in 2011, so that's 11 years. Zootopia came out in 2016 and Zootopia 2 came out in 2025, so that's 9 years. Yeah, I kinda wish that Zootopia 2 had done what Puss in Boots: The Last Wish had done. Be a completely different art style, still recognizably, Puss in Boots from DreamWorks, but a completely different art style. But we didn't get that. Or maybe it could have been like Kung Fu Panda 4, where Kung Fu Panda 4, it did basically lift the art style from the first 3 movies wholesale. It didn't try to revolutionize the art style or anything, but just in terms of cinematography, choreography, Kung Fu Panda 4 was its own thing. They had all those cool like kung fu-y cuts where it's like, split frames and characters showing up in different things. Like Kung Fu Panda 4 wasn't nearly as drastic a difference as The Last Wish, but it still did something to at least visually be its own thing. Zootopia 2 is just more of Zootopia, with a little bit of with graphic sliders pushed forward. And there is nothing inherently wrong with that. Zootopia 2 is a good movie. I just feel like it could have been so much more, so much better. So the the one biggest thing that I think Zootopia 2 did that is a strict improvement over the first one. It's like if Zootopia 2 is going to be like rehashing so much of the first one in so many ways, including having a twist villain, at least they were able to make the twist villain better. Because Paubert being the twist villain makes so much more sense than Bellwether in the first movie. I think that Bellwether being the twist villain in the first movie is like the only major story issue I have with that movie. The rest of the movie is amazing story-wise. It all makes sense. It's all satisfying, but not Bellwether being the twist villain. I think that Paubert, I keep want to saying to, I always want to say Clawbert, but no, it's Paubert. And I wish they wouldn't have tried to make it so animally. I wish they would have just called him Robert. But anyway, so Paubert being the twist villain, it makes sense. He had motive. He, like, it was his family, and he was trying to preserve their thing, and he figured that the best way he could do it was by getting someone who knew more about it that he'd be able to, double cross. It's like a little convoluted, but it works. Bellwether, there is absolutely nothing that really, about her character that makes it seem like her ending up being the mastermind behind the problems in the first movie would be satisfying. And then I especially dislike what they did with Bellwether in the sequel. You look at Bellwether in the first movie, is she crazy? No. A little bit eccentric, but that's fine. But then, starting from, a little bit of a flashback to a courtroom setting in the first movie, they decided that they were going to make Bellwether into insanity. They just turned her into a, mustache twiddling, fingers tapping villain that she never was in the first movie. And I just don't think it works. Where she flies off the handle, she pushes tables over, she has maniacal laughing. I really don't think that was the direction to go with Bellwether. And in fact, if I were in charge of writing this movie, or if I had any say in this movie, if I could change one little thing, I would basically just try to have Bellwether not be in it. Sweep her under the rug. If they absolutely must show her in the prison, don't try to turn her into some crazy, covering her entire jail cell with her own wool. Yeah. I don't know what to say about this movie. I honestly think it's a pretty good movie. And I think that, especially considering the rest of the output that the studio has been putting out over the past few years, this movie is like, it's a miracle that it's as good as it is. Because you look at Raya and the Last Dragon, like, that movie has its qualities, basically just Sisu. That movie has Sisu, and it also has a whole bunch of other stuff that nobody else cares about. And then there's Encanto, actually good movie. Like, nothing bad to say about Encanto. It's not perfect, but it's a good movie. And then you have Strange World and Wish. Like, yeesh, Strange World and Wish. Although, full disclosure, I haven't seen Moana 2. I don't know if it's good or bad. But, so, maybe Moana 2 is good. But based on, Raya and the Last Dragon and Strange World and Wish, it's like, yeah, Disney needed a win here. And they got one. It's like, all anybody wanted from this movie was to not be awful. And it isn't. It's not an awful movie. It's a good movie. But the first Zootopia was so good. And the rest of the industry, look at Illumination with Sing 2, DreamWorks with Kung Fu Panda 4, and The Bad Guys 2. Although I also have issues with The Bad Guys 2. I'm gonna put Kung Fu Panda 4 as the sequel that this movie should be judged against from DreamWorks. Yeah, like, this movie just doesn't, it it's good, but it just could have been so much more. Just imagine if Zootopia 2 had gone the way of The Rescuers Down Under, or the way of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, where it is a sequel, but it comes in with a brand new art style. It's like technology has moved forward and you can see it on screen. Just that, just that alone would have been enough to make this movie so much more endearing to me. Instead of just being more of Zootopia 1. Like, there are some people who say that, the sequel is never as good as the original. I just point, like, me being obsessed with Sing 2 and Kung Fu Panda 4 and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. The reason I'm obsessed with those is because those are the sequels that were so much more. But Zootopia 2 isn't that. At least, not the way I see it right now. Like I said at the beginning of this video, my opinion on Zootopia 2 could absolutely flip-flop. It's happened before. My favorite example is Kung Fu Panda 3. When I first saw Kung Fu Panda 3, I did not like it. I thought that it wasn't the way that, that Kung Fu Panda 2 should be followed up. But then I went and watched it again about 10 years later. Actually, closer to 6 years later when I did that. Anyway, so I watched it way later, and I ended up really liking it. I think Kung Fu Panda 3 is a good movie. I didn't think that before, but I do now. And all it took was a little bit of time, and then watching it again when I was in the mood, and watching it again when I was there with my own TV, ready to just watch it there on my own. No, without, yeah. ideal viewing experience. And maybe the same thing will happen with Zootopia 2. I kind of doubt it at this point, but it might. Although, thinking back on it, I still think that my biggest criticism with Kung Fu Panda 3 still holds water, because I think that Kung Fu Panda 2 is the best movie of all four of them. It's amazing. I got the 4K version. It's awesome. I recommend anybody who likes the Kung Fu Panda movies to watch them in 4K. And the very end of Kung Fu Panda 2 ends with Po going to his dad, Mr. Ping, and saying, "I know who I am now. I'm your son." And then the camera floats away to faraway places over the mountains, and then you see a panda sitting in a sort of meditation spot, and then he looks around and says, "My son is alive," and then he goes and sees an entire village of other pandas. I thought then, and I still think now, that the pandas that we see at the end of Kung Fu Panda 2 and the dad and panda villagers that we see in Kung Fu Panda 3, there is not harmony between those two depictions, and I liked the depiction of the first one more. I guess the third movie kind of addresses that, because it has the whole thing of, maybe we did know how to harness chi before, but we don't anymore. I think that part of the movie is still kind of weak, but yeah, so I think that maybe that'll happen with Zootopia 2. I'll end up liking it a whole lot more in 3 or 4 years when I watch it again, and maybe I can still have some issues with it. I am excited to see what Disney does with their next project. I think Disney has announced they're making Frozen 3, but beyond that, I think they're going to be doing some original IPs. Although, given all the problems that I have with Wish and Strange World, being an original IP doesn't necessarily mean good things, but at least those movies were pretty, At least the studio doesn't make ugly movies. Except in the case of Chicken Little. I think that Walt Disney Animation Studios' ugliest movie is Chicken Little. Say what you will about, the story and the writing of Chicken Little, but just on a pure visual level, I think that is the studio's least visually appealing movie. And then Zootopia 2, at the very end, it had, the famous post-credit sequence where a feather comes down. And the obvious implication is that, they're teasing Zootopia 3, and the big thing in Zootopia 3 will be that there are now birds. It's great. Maybe there's a good story there. I really hope that it's better than whatever it was they were doing in Zootopia 2, because I feel like Zootopia 2 having reptiles in it, there being reptiles felt like such a small part of the entire movie. It almost felt a little unneeded. Was anybody at the end of Zootopia 1 thinking, "Oh man, this movie needs more than mammals"? I wasn't. I didn't think that. It's kind of cool, and I think that they did a good job with some of the character designs. But yeah, I have a bunch of other issues with this movie, and I think like I'm just full disclosure, I'm planning on doing so many more complete animation videos. I'm planning on doing one for Nick, Paubert's sister Kitty, and Gazelle. There was some other one. But oh, and the wolves. I love the wolves in Zootopia. I wish that there was a wolf main character. But instead, all we get are background character wolves. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot more, and I have a lot of things to say about the character of Nick in Zootopia 2. I think that Nick, like, they did Nick really dirty in Zootopia 2. In terms of just his character. Like, it's like they didn't remember who he was in the first movie. Or intentionally forgot so that they could explore different places and it would be new to Nick too. Anyway, I'll get through that when I do. But in the meantime, thank you so much for continuing to stick through one of the longest, most rambling commentaries I've ever done. But to be fair, this is one of the longest videos I've ever done. Zootopia 2 is a long movie, and Judy Hopps had a whole lot of screen time in it. And, you know, it takes a whole lot of time to make these videos, and it takes so much time to do the commentary. Holy cow, commentary is my least favorite part of making these videos. My hope is that most people who don't like the commentary just mute it, or don't even watch the video, you know? These are the videos I make. I've been making them the exact same way for almost 6 years now. Thanks for watching.